There is something about you that this world never understood. You've walked through life carrying a weight no one else could see, feeling eyes on you that no one else noticed. From an early age, you were marked, set apart, not by human hands, but by something ancient, sacred, and divine. And while others have called it coincidence, stubbornness, or sensitivity, heaven called it evidence. Evidence that you are not like the rest. Evidence that you were chosen. This is Chosen One's sanctuary. And if you are hearing this message right now, it means heaven is confirming what your soul has always suspected. That your identity was hidden, not because you were forgotten, but because you were being protected. In Scripture, it happens over and over. From David in the fields, to Esther behind palace walls, to Moses in exile, every chosen vessel was first concealed, misunderstood, or exiled, until their appointed hour. That hour was always preceded by disruption, by confusion, and by a sacred stirring they could not ignore. And that is exactly what has been happening in your life. The strange restlessness, the back-to-back warfare, the feeling that something is building without knowing what. You haven't been losing your mind. You've been standing at the edge of your revelation. This Sunday is not just another square on the calendar. For some, it will pass like every other day. But for the chosen, it will unfold like prophecy in real time. What's been hidden in your spirit will be called forward. What's been locked behind generational walls will begin to break open. What you do in this moment will echo far beyond it. There is a mystery that has followed you. And before this video ends, you will understand why your journey has been so heavy and why the enemy tried to erase your name from history before you ever had a chance to rise. So stay with me, because in the next few minutes, we are going to open the first veil. And when we do, you will finally see what your soul has been sensing for years. You were never cursed. You were covered, and that covering is beginning to lift. Let us begin. The misunderstood, marking why you felt watched since birth. There are moments you can't explain. Strange glances from strangers. The way rooms seem to shift when you walk in. The unease others feel in your presence without ever knowing your name. You've carried it since childhood. The sense that something about you doesn't blend, won't conform, can't hide. And you've wondered, more times than you've admitted, what is wrong with me? But here is the truth. Long buried and now rising to the surface. There is nothing wrong with you. There is something different about you, and that difference is divine. Chosen ones rarely arrive with fanfare. They do not wear visible crowns. Instead, they are wrapped in contradiction, celebrated in one moment, despised the next, misunderstood by the very people they try to love. Their difference is not always their doing. It is their design. What you carry was placed on you, not by man, but by God. And because the world cannot recognize heaven's imprint, it responds with confusion, envy, or silence. Joseph knew this reality. He was marked from the start, not just by dreams, but by the visible sign of favor, a coat that set him apart. That simple garment unleashed a fury in his brothers that exposed a deeper truth. It was never about the coat. It was about the call. When you are chosen, even the smallest display of grace on your life can provoke storms you didn't start. But the storm is not a curse. It is confirmation. You may have been the child that never fit the mold, the one who cried without reason, asked questions too deep for your age, or felt emotions no one else seemed to notice. That wasn't weakness. That was sensitivity to the spirit realm. You weren't fragile. You were tuned. Prophetically, this is what the enemy always fears. The emergence of a soul that cannot be shaped by the world's systems. That is why your resistance started young. Before you ever had language for warfare, you were being fought. Not because of what you had done, but because of who you were becoming. If you ignore this mark, you will spend your life shrinking to fit spaces that cannot contain you. You'll chase relationships that resent your radiance. You'll keep trying to explain the spiritual weight you carry to people who only see your surface. And slowly, you'll begin to doubt what heaven already confirmed. But if you embrace it, if you stop apologizing for being different, you'll unlock what the resistance has tried to bury for years. The truth that you were never meant to blend in. You were meant to break through. And this is where your story begins to unfold. Not in applause, but in recognition. Not in loud revelation, but in the quiet knowing that your life was marked before it began. And once the mark is acknowledged, the shaping begins. The season of divine concealment, hidden but not forgotten. Chosen ones are not launched, they are hidden. Placed in seasons where everything seems delayed, every prayer feels unanswered, and every door appears locked. But concealment is not abandonment. It is preparation disguised as obscurity. It is the shelter of silence while heaven sharpens what must one day be revealed. David was anointed king while still tending sheep. Oil ran down his head, but no throne awaited him. Instead, he was sent back to the fields, back to the dirt, back to the ordinary. What kind of coronation leads to isolation? Only the kind authored by heaven. Because God is not rushed by man's timelines. He hides what he deems holy. You've asked yourself why your gifts remain unnoticed, why your obedience seems to go unrewarded, why, despite your faithfulness, recognition remains out of reach. But recognition was never the goal. Refinement was. You've been hidden not to be forgotten, but to be formed. In the wilderness of divine concealment, the ego dies. Pride is stripped. Dependency is built. God trains your hearing, not for the applause of crowds, but for the whispers of His Spirit. And when the day of revealing comes, you won't be launched from insecurity. You'll rise from intimacy. This hidden season is the place where God removes the layers you never knew you wore. The need to be seen, the fear of being misunderstood, the craving for affirmation. All of it gets burned away until what's left is a vessel that needs only His voice to move. But here is the warning. If you resent your hiddenness, you will rush out of it too soon. You'll force doors open that were meant to open on their own, and you'll find yourself exposed before you're established. Every divine calling requires a divine concealment, not as punishment, as protection. Just as Jesus spent 30 years in silence before 3 years of public ministry, you too are being forged in the quiet. Not to be forgotten, but to be made unforgettable. There is a mystery unfolding in your life, and the silence is not a void. It's a womb. So do not despise the hidden season. It is holy. It is heaven's hedge around something not yet ready to be revealed. The world may not see it, but God does. And when the time comes, what was hidden in the dark will shine brighter than anything forged in haste. Some are delayed because of disobedience, but the chosen are often delayed because of destiny. And that delay is not denial. It is design. It is the mercy of a God who refuses to release what He's still perfecting, and your perfection is underway. The weight of unseen warfare. Why hell hit you first? There is a reason your storms came early. A reason the attacks started before you even knew what spiritual warfare was. Some of you were targeted in childhood, ambushed in adolescence, bruised in relationships that never should have broken you. But they did. And for years, you thought it was bad luck, family dysfunction, personal failure. Yet behind all the confusion, something deeper was taking place. Hell never wastes energy. It does not throw darts at empty vessels. Darkness studies what heaven marks, and once it sees a name etched in glory, it goes to work early, waging silent war in classrooms, friendships, hospital rooms, and bedrooms where no one hears the cries but God. Job was not attacked because he sinned. He was attacked because he carried favor, because heaven had a conversation about him that hell overheard. And the moment his name was spoken in heaven, it was opposed in hell. That same pattern has played out in your life, whether you realized it or not. There are wounds you've carried with no explanation, breakdowns that had no clear trigger, nights you survived that you still can't explain. You've been caught in storms that didn't make sense for someone just living a normal life. And that's the point. You were never meant to live a normal life. You were called to carry weight. The enemy saw what you hadn't discovered yet: the anointing in your voice, the fire in your spirit, the generational freedom tied to your obedience. And so he launched preemptive attacks, hoping that if he struck early enough, you'd never rise into who you are. But here's the good news. You're still standing. The fact that you are hearing these words now means the attack failed. You didn't crumble. You didn't lose your mind. You didn't drown in despair. You were wounded, yes, but not destroyed. Prophetically, I tell you this: every early assault on your life was not just opposition, it was verification. It means you carry something holy, something dangerous to darkness, something that must be protected, not questioned. But take this seriously. If you don't understand the reason for your warfare, you will keep mislabeling it. You'll blame people, seasons, or even yourself. And you'll live in a loop of survival rather than stepping into strategic authority. That's exactly what the enemy wants. For you to see your suffering as random, instead of seeing it as revelation. Here is the deeper truth. The earlier the attack, the higher the crown. The more severe the resistance, the more sacred the call. And if you want to know how dangerous your assignment is, just look at how hard the enemy tried to take you out before you even stepped into it. And now, the time has come to recognize the signs, to stop apologizing for the weight you carry, because that weight is about to become a weapon in the hands of the Most High. You are not under attack. You are under construction. And the battle you survived is the very proof that your future is not only real, it's already in motion. And that future is not just about you. It's timed. It's aligned. And for many, it begins on a day that the world sees as ordinary, but heaven sees as a turning point. A day marked not by routine, but by revelation. A day called Sunday. Sunday is prophetic unfolding, what will be revealed. There are days on the calendar that pass without meaning. And then there are days wrapped in mystery, days that carry weight far beyond hours or minutes. Sunday is one of those days, not because it's the weekend, not because it marks the end of a week or the start of another, but because Sunday is woven into the very fabric of resurrection, revelation, and reversal. In the natural, Sunday may feel quiet, peaceful, predictable. But in the spirit, it is a threshold, A day when heaven has historically unveiled what the world never saw coming. When Jesus rose from the tomb, it was on a Sunday. The stone rolled away not with trumpets or lightning, but in stillness that split history in two. And many missed it, not because the miracle was small, but because their eyes were closed when the light broke through. This is the pattern of prophetic unfolding. What looks like a typical moment becomes a divine intersection. And that's what Sunday represents for the chosen ones. A portal, a crossing, a summons into a deeper unveiling. You may have felt the build-up, subtle nudges, spiritual pressure, dreams more vivid than usual, emotions you couldn't name. That's not anxiety, it's alignment. You're not imagining the weight in the atmosphere. You are sensing the acceleration of divine timing. And this Sunday, something will shift. For some, it will be visible. New opportunities, divine connections, unexpected clarity. For others, it will be internal. Chains breaking, callings resurfacing, courage awakening. But for the chosen, it will not be missed. Because what's unfolding has been building for months, even years. The wait was long, but the window is now. Do not mistake this as hype. This is Holy Spirit rhythm. The same way Noah had a window. The same way Israel had a night to move. The same way Mary showed up to a tomb that was already empty. Destiny doesn't knock twice. It opens once, and those who are ready walk through. But here's the warning. If you treat this Sunday like every other day, you will miss what has been orchestrated around your obedience. If you shrug off the stirring, you will delay doors that were scheduled to open. This is why prophetic sensitivity matters, not to make you feel spiritual, but to position you accurately. Because doors do not respond to emotion, they respond to timing. And Sunday carries timing. Prophetic timing. Resurrection timing. The kind that turns endings into beginnings and silence into sound. You've been sensing it. The tension, the build-up, the unseen movement in your spirit. That is not coincidence. It is your sign. The page is turning. And when it does, your hesitation must not hold you back. Because what comes next will not wait for your fear to settle. It will wait for your faith to rise. And rise it must. Because this unfolding will lead you to a crossroads. One path leads to promise. The other to delay. The difference will be found in your response. The cost of delay. What happens when chosen ones hesitate? There is a moment in every chosen one's journey where delay becomes dangerous. Not all waiting is holy. Not every pause is obedience. Some delays are divinely appointed. Others are self-inflicted. And when heaven moves, but the chosen one hesitates, the consequences can echo beyond a single lifetime. The story of Israel standing at the edge of Canaan is not just history. It is a warning. After all the signs, all the miracles, all the confirmations, they stood one step away from promise and stepped back. Fear whispered louder than faith. Comfort demanded compromise, and a whole generation died circling a desert they were meant to conquer. Delay didn't just cost them time, it cost them legacy. You've felt this too. Times when God nudged you, when you knew what needed to be done, but doubt held your tongue. Fear froze your feet. You told yourself, maybe next week, maybe after things settle, maybe when I'm ready. But the chosen are rarely ready in comfort. They are called into courage. Heaven does not move by your feelings. It moves by alignment. And when you sense that divine stirring and refuse to respond, something closes. Not God's love, but the window. The window through which breakthrough was scheduled, through which favor was positioned, through which destiny waited. You may still reach the promise, but it will come with more scars than it needed to. That's the cost of hesitation. What should have been inherited becomes wrestled. What should have been a gift becomes a war. And what was meant to begin becomes a cycle repeated. Saul learned this too late. He was chosen, anointed, even celebrated. But delay led to disobedience. And disobedience, when repeated, turned into disqualification. God's plan did not fail. Saul just refused to move with it. You are not Saul. You are David. But even David had to move when summoned. Even David had to leave the fields when his name was called. You cannot remain hidden when heaven opens the curtain. And I say this prophetically. Many of you are standing at the edge of your Jordan. The waters have not parted yet because your foot hasn't moved. But the second you obey, what seemed impossible will make way. The question is not whether God will do it. The question is whether you'll move when He says now. This is not condemnation. It is invitation. Heaven has been patient. But that patience is not permission to stay in fear. It is mercy giving you a final chance to rise. You've circled this mountain long enough. You've asked for confirmation after confirmation. And now, heaven has answered again, not with a sign in the sky, but with a voice in your spirit. This is your Red Sea, your Canaan border, your Esther moment, and your delay will either become your deliverance or your detour. The choice is yours, and time is not waiting. Because hidden inside the delay is not just your blessing, it is someone else's breakthrough waiting on your obedience. The battle for your bloodline. Legacy in motion. What if I told you the weight you carry is not just about you? That the warfare wrapped around your life is not punishment, but protection for a lineage that hasn't yet breathed its first breath? Many of the trials you've endured, the patterns you've broken, the demons you've wrestled in silence, the generational curses you've refused to pass down, were never just for your freedom. They were for your children's safety, your grandchildren's clarity, a generation yet unseen. The truth is this: legacy begins in the spirit before it's visible in the flesh. And the chosen are those who heaven calls not just to survive, but to shift bloodlines, to be the interruption in a cycle that's gone on too long, to be the Moses that walks a people out of bondage they never questioned, to be the one who says, "It ends with me." Abraham stepped out without a map, and because of one act of obedience, nations were birthed. That is legacy. Ruth broke with her past and walked into a new land, and through her faith, a lineage was born that would carry the Messiah. That is legacy. These were not comfortable choices. They were crossroads, and they carried generational consequence. Some of you were born into atmospheres thick with patterns: addiction, shame, silence, rage, poverty, deception, and you wondered why the fire felt hotter for you, why the weight settled on your shoulders when others in your family seemed untouched. It's because you were never meant to repeat it. You were meant to redeem it. Hell fights bloodlines. It always has. Because when one chosen one wakes up, the enemy knows the damage won't stop with them. One decision made in private can shatter a curse held for generations. One yes to God in the secret place can become the open gate for destiny to flow like a river. But the opposite is also true. One act of compromise can keep the door shut. One cycle repeated can cause the next generation to fight battles that were meant to die with you. That is why the cost is high, because the ripple is wide. The Word of God says in Deuteronomy that he shows mercy to 1,000 generations of those who love him and keep his commands. That is not poetic exaggeration. That is covenant. You are either breaking ground or repeating patterns. You are either handing down chains or handing down keys. Prophetically, this is where many of you are right now, at the fault line between what was and what will be. You've felt the tremors, the generational pressure, the sense that your life is not just about your career, your marriage, your comfort. It is about what heaven is building through you. And if you knew what was tied to your yes, you'd never hesitate again. So hear this. You are not just carrying a calling. You are carrying a nation, a future, a name that will be remembered not for what you built, but for what you broke. The chosen are the ones who slay giants their children will never have to meet. And that is why you must not quit, because your obedience is the doorway. And someone is waiting to walk through it. The crown exchange, laying down the false. There comes a moment in the life of every chosen one where God asks not for your effort, but for your surrender. Not for your noise, but for your silence. And in that moment, he places before you 2 crowns, one forged by heaven, one handed to you by the world. They both glitter. They both carry weight, but only one carries glory. The counterfeit crown is seductive. It speaks in the voice of culture, comfort, and control. It tells you that success equals applause. That value comes from validation. That identity is something you earn, not something you were given. Many wear it proudly, unaware that it is hollow, that it rusts in the light of eternity. But heaven never crowns the way earth does. The crown God offers is one of righteousness, of obedience, of purpose wrapped in purity. And to receive it, you must lay something down. Not something external, but something internal. The crown of striving, the crown of bitterness, the identity you built from wounds, applause, or fear. You cannot wear both. There is only one head, and it must bow before it is crowned. Jesus wore a crown of thorns before he wore the crown of glory. That is the pattern. Suffering precedes enthronement. Surrender precedes placement. And for the chosen, the greatest battles are not for attention. They are for alignment. Many of you have worn the wrong crown for too long. You've lived for the applause of those who didn't know your purpose. You've chased approval from people who never saw your anointing. And the weight of trying to be enough has left you weary. That's because you weren't built to carry counterfeit glory. You were born for consecrated purpose. But heaven is patient. And now, the invitation stands. Exchange what you built in the dark for what God crafted in the secret place. Lay down your need to be seen and receive the authority to see clearly. Lay down the titles that man gave you and receive the name heaven already wrote in fire. The Apostle Paul spoke of this in 1 Corinthians. Run in such a way to obtain the crown that does not perish. That crown is not earned through perfection. It is received through surrender. And here is the beauty of the exchange. Once you lay down the false, the true crown fits perfectly. Because it was made for your head, formed for your story, weighted to match your calling. But if you cling to the counterfeit, the real will feel foreign. If you refuse to release what is fading, you will miss what is eternal. This is your coronation moment. Not in a palace, but in a decision. Not before a crowd, but before the throne. And the only question is, will you bow to be crowned? Or will you resist and walk away heavy with what was never yours to carry? The crown exchange is not loud, but it is holy. And those who embrace it are never the same. Because when heaven crowns you, it doesn't just touch your head, it reorders your life. The seal cannot be broken. You may not see it in the mirror, but there is a mark on you, a seal, invisible to human eyes, yet undeniable in the spirit. It is the seal of divine ownership, heaven's declaration etched into your identity before you ever knew how to pray. That seal does not fade with failure. It does not lift when you stumble. It is not based on performance. It is based on promise. In the ancient world, a king's seal declared authenticity and authority. A document with the royal imprint could not be altered. It carried weight beyond debate. And when God marked you with His Spirit, He placed His own decree upon your life, one that hell has tried repeatedly to erase, but failed every time. The Apostle Paul spoke of this seal in his letter to the Ephesians, that we were marked with a seal, the promised Holy Spirit, who guarantees our inheritance. That is not metaphor. It is spiritual fact. And it means that no matter how hard the enemy fought to rewrite your story, the original script remains untouched in heaven's scroll. You've questioned your worth because of rejection. You've wondered if you disqualified yourself when you fell. But the seal was never in your hands. It was placed by a hand greater than yours. And no mistake, no betrayal, no delay can undo what God has already stamped as His. Saul lost his crown, but David never lost the seal. Even when he failed, even when he wept in shame, even when he hid in caves. Why? Because the seal is not perfection. The seal is surrender. And when you belong to God, your detours cannot override your destiny. But hear this clearly. When you forget the seal, you live like a stranger in your own story. You settle for counterfeit identities. You shrink around people who were never meant to validate you. You doubt what has already been decided in heaven's courtroom. That's why the enemy attacks your identity first. Because if he can make you forget you are sealed, he can make you act like you are disposable. But today, that lie is breaking. Because the seal still stands, and you are not abandoned. You are marked. Picture a weathered letter, carried through storms, smeared by rain, torn at the edges, but the wax seal is still intact. That's your life. The journey may have bruised you, but your calling remains, and what's written inside cannot be taken, tampered with, or traded. The seal says you are owned, protected, reserved, and anointed for something that cannot be canceled. So walk with your head lifted, not in arrogance, but in knowing. You do not belong to this world. You do not belong to failure. You do not belong to fear. You belong to the one who sealed you, and that seal is a silent shout in the spirit realm. This one is mine. And that is why your scars no longer define you, because now they serve a higher purpose. They do not disqualify you. They verify what the seal has always meant to prove, that you have survived what others could not. And now you carry proof. Proof that the fire did not consume you. Proof that the chosen are not crushed. They are carved. Your scars are sacred weapons. There are marks on your life that no one sees. Invisible ridges beneath your smile. Memories pressed into silence. Betrayals buried in your bloodstream. And yet somehow, you're still here. Breathing. Walking. Pressing forward. But not without scars. And for too long, you've seen those scars as signs of shame. As proof that something broke inside you. But heaven sees them differently. Your scars are not stains. They are signatures. They are heaven's evidence that you passed through the fire and emerged not as ash, but as a vessel forged in flame. They are proof that every weapon formed against you failed. that what tried to kill you became the very thing God now uses to qualify you. When Jesus rose from the dead, he didn't hide his scars. He showed them. The wounds in his hands were not erased by glory. They were glorified, transformed from pain into testimony. And when Thomas doubted, it wasn't a sermon that convinced him. It was the sight of a scar. That's how powerful they are. Your scars carry the same sacred authority. They do not weaken your witness. They sharpen it. When you speak to the broken, they don't listen to your perfection. They search your story for the places where you bled and didn't die, for the nights you didn't sleep but still woke up, for the mornings you got dressed in courage even when your heart was in pieces. Think of Job. His life was ripped apart, his health shattered, his reputation slandered. But after the storm, he did not just recover. He was restored. And that restoration was not the erasing of what happened. It was the proof that what happened didn't win. That is what your scars say to the world. I was struck, but I stood. I was crushed, but not consumed. I was left for dead, but God breathed again. And this is why the enemy hates your healing. Because every scar on your soul is now a sword in your hand. Every memory that once made you cry now makes demons tremble. Because you've been to the bottom and rose. You've walked through shame and still worshiped. You've faced abandonment and still remained. But take this warning to heart. If you despise your scars, you will waste your weapons. If you try to hide them, they cannot heal others. The world does not need more polished pretenders. It needs wounded warriors who are not afraid to roll up their sleeves and say, "Me too, and I survived." This is the beauty of the chosen. Their pain is not wasted. It becomes their pulpit. Their cracks don't disqualify them. They make room for glory to shine through. So carry your scars with reverence, for they are the silent sermons your life will preach to those who think survival is impossible. They are proof of resurrection. They are holy. They are yours. And they are not the end of your story. They are the beginning of someone else's. And from those scars, something begins to rise. Not just identity, not just strength, but fire. Fire that has been smoldering for years, waiting to be awakened. And now, it can no longer stay hidden, because what was scarred is now set ablaze, and what was hidden is now ready to ignite. The fire within, you cannot stay hidden. There is a fire inside you, not the fire of ambition, not the fire of emotion, but the fire of divine assignment. It has burned silently beneath the ashes of discouragement, disappointment, and delay. Others saw your calm. Heaven saw your embers. And now, that fire is rising. You've tried to hide it. You've tried to tone it down, to make it more acceptable, more palatable to those who live in compromise. But the fire in a chosen one cannot be smothered forever. Sooner or later, it demands to breathe. Jeremiah said it best. When he tried to stay silent, the word of the Lord was like fire shut up in his bones, and he could not hold it in. That is what many of you are feeling now. The tremble in your chest, the pressure in your spirit, the sense that you cannot keep living small while something enormous is stirring inside of you. That is not restlessness. That is ignition. Think of Moses at the burning bush. It was not the fire that caught his attention. It was the fact that the bush was burning but not consumed. That is the mark of divine fire. It will not burn you out. It will burn through you. And what it leaves behind is not ruin, but readiness. That fire within you has made you uncomfortable in places others find cozy. It has made compromise unbearable. It has made shallow living intolerable. You've looked around and wondered why you can't just be content like everyone else. Why mediocrity makes your soul ache. It's because you were never built for survival. You were built for revival. But fire does not apologize for burning, and neither should you. This is your commissioning moment, not from man, but from the throne. The fire in you is your assignment calling your name. And it's not asking for perfection. It's asking for permission. Permission to spread, to speak, to shine. Not in arrogance, but in alignment. Because the fire isn't just for you. It's meant to light the path for others still stumbling in shadows. And yes, fire attracts. Some will come close, drawn by your heat. Others will retreat, threatened by your intensity. But let it burn anyway, because fire purifies, it exposes, it transforms. And if you try to smother it, to keep people comfortable, you will forfeit the very power that was placed in you for this hour. This fire has survived storms, heartbreak, betrayal, and silence. And now, it is ready to roar. Not in violence, but in holiness. Not in noise, but in clarity. Not for fame, but for fruit. The enemy didn't fear your talent. He feared your ignition. Because a chosen one on fire cannot be controlled, cannot be manipulated, cannot be silenced. And now heaven is fanning the flame. Every scar, every season, every silent cry has been kindling. And today, the spark is caught. The flame is spreading. And the world is about to see what God hid for such a time as this. Because when a chosen one burns, the darkness trembles. And in this burning, something eternal awakens. The voice, the vision, the mantle. And as the flame rises, so too does the final unveiling. What all the trials, all the warfare, all the waiting were preparing you for. What comes next is not just fire, it is glory. Some things are hidden not to be forgotten, but to be preserved for the right hour. That has always been the way of heaven. It shields what is sacred. It guards what is not yet ready. And then, when the time is right, when alignment meets assignment, it unveils what has been waiting in silence. You are that unveiling. The pain, the delay, the isolation, the unanswered questions, they were not the end. They were the preparation, the shaping ground of fire, the silent classroom of destiny. And now, the scroll of your life has turned a page. You are not the same. The mark has been confirmed. The seal has been tested. The fire has been lit. But here lies the mystery that still remains. What will you do now that you know? Now that the veil has been lifted, now that you see the threads woven through your story, threads of promise, resistance, calling, and wait, will you return to sleep? Or will you rise with purpose? This is the tension the chosen must walk with, that even when God reveals, we must respond. That revelation demands realignment. That knowledge without movement is just another form of delay. So I say this to you with love, clarity, and fire. What unfolds next depends on your willingness to carry what you were born for. It is not light. It is not easy, but it is holy. And the world is groaning for the revealing of the sons and daughters who have been hidden for far too long. Heaven did not awaken you just to inspire you. It awakened you to commission you. You are marked, not for survival, but for disruption. Not for silence, but for awakening. You are sealed. You are crowned. And your unfolding has already begun. If this message pierced your spirit, if something inside you stirred with the weight of recognition, then let your response be an act of agreement. Like this message, if the fire within you was confirmed, Share it with someone who carries the same ache of being different. Subscribe to Chosen One Sanctuary so you don't miss what heaven is about to unveil next. And in the comments, speak your identity into the atmosphere. Write the words, "I will not stay hidden." Let them echo through the unseen. Let them declare to heaven, hell, and your own spirit that your hour has come. We are chosen ones, and this sanctuary is where the hidden rise.